Go ahead, Tim. That's your cue.
Oh, okay. Welcome, everyone. I'm Professor Tim McClellan, Director of the Maritime Logistics and Security Program. We have a very exciting speaker with us today, Mr. Daniel Turissini. Mr. Turissini is highly skilled, certified, and educated cybersecurity practitioner and educator. He holds a bachelor's degree, a dual license degree out of Kings Point, 1981. That's one of the rare degrees. Congratulations on that, Dan. And also a master's from George Washington University with additional credit hours towards a doctorate in systems engineering and applied science, concentrated on information assurance and cybersecurity. Dan has held a number of senior technology positions. He's a systems engineering / integration innovator and leading expert in trusted managed services, and has achieved trusted authority certifications for public and private enterprises, pivotal in achieving a vision of implementing the next generation of cybersecurity. He's also a serial entrepreneur and expert consultant, and he's provided advice, education, and training in information assurance and cybersecurity policy, practices, and technology for the last 2 decades. He's currently a lead trainer for the MyTags Cyber Skilled Mariner courses and has been a guest expert in cyber and risk management at Marymount University, and is a cybersecurity maturity model certified assessor and instructor. In addition, Dan has been the chair for the Marine Technology Society Maritime Security and Infrastructure Committee, and is a deputy chair of the AFCEA Homeland Security Committee. He's also on that group's Educational Foundation board, providing educational incentives and opportunities and assistance in science, technology, and engineering and mathematics. So Dan, please, if you would start your presentation, we're all looking forward to it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tim, and everybody else. Especially thanks to all of you midshipmen at the Academy. It's good to see you in the happiest place in the world. And I hope you're having as much fun as I had when I was there. So this is a little bit off of the beaten track, if you will. As Tim mentioned, I was a dual graduate, so I did get both a marine engineering and deck license, which 40 years later, I still don't know what I want to do, which is a big part of getting out of Kings Point. You have a lot of options. I'm going to talk a little bit about that and how my path brought me where I am. So first, we're going to talk about what's going on. Some of these slides are a little dated on this first slide. I just wanted to make a point, though. We've had Navy accidents, and some of them have been officially or unofficially attributed to cyber attacks. We've had ships hacked in the English Channel, basically blockading the channel. They pocketed, the criminals have pocketed billions of dollars through email and tech support. And we're going to talk a lot about phishing and social engineering a little bit. Maersk, 300 million and disrupted operations for 2 weeks. Ships fooled in GPS spoofing attacked, suggested that the Russians were getting at us. And this happened in the Mediterranean and Black Sea. And here's one that's related but odd, and this is one of the ways I got into back into the maritime industry. Is my company built a lot of the cryptography on the TWIC card. You probably all have a TWIC card, and but they kept forging these, and they say easily forged, and the reason was because the government, specifically Homeland Security, specific the Coast Guard, did not implement the cryptography on the other end. So we had a very expensive piece of plastic we never really used, a lot of pushback from the unions, but at the end of the day, we had technology that could have been used to ford off a lot of these problems, but it wasn't used properly. And that's a big problem with technology today. Average cost of a cyber attack now exceeds, it's even more than this now, it's about $1.5 million. We're going to talk a little bit about that. But the bottom line, and we're going to talk a little bit about risk, And that's where you're going to try to determine the severity of the problem and the likelihood it's going to happen, right? So something's going to happen, and we know something's going to happen. That's no mystery anymore. And we know the severity has gotten worse and worse, and that's because we've ignored the problem for a very long time. So my thesis is that there isn't a lot of low and medium risk in the cyber environment. It's going to happen. As a matter of fact, most people don't even know it happened, and it's going to cause a lot of problems. So a data breach in the US costs over twice the global average. So one of the things we need to know as business people and as government people in the United States is where are the target? And we're a target for a lot of reasons. 9.44 million is the average cost of a data breach in the United States. That's about twice of the global average. So, you know, they want our money. About 1/5 of the breaches studied were a result of a supply chain compromise. So it's not always the end company that's being infiltrated. They get in through their supply chain. And an interesting part, and I've been working on this for the federal government for the better part of 25 to 30 years, stolen or compromised credentials were not only the most common cause of data breaches, but at 327 days, they take the longest time to identify. This attack vector is costly and a big deal. So if you wanted to look, there's a cost of data breach report 2022. You can look that up. It's a very interesting report. IBM has a hand in it, and so does a group called Pokemon. So we got to look at this as well, there's two ways of looking at this. Some of you are going to probably go military, and the military and actually our whole federal government, that we really have an offensive cybersecurity need and requirement. I deal mostly with the commercial side now because one, that's where I kind of cut my teeth in building stuff for the government to protect the government supply chain. And two, because that's where all the money is. I mean, we play games and they play games with hitting our Pentagon and hitting everything else. And, you know, we just saw a big thing happen in the Pentagon. And one of the things you got to remember is cybersecurity is not all about hacking in and getting infiltration through digits, right? In this case, somebody who was not authorized evidently printed some pieces of paper, took those pieces of paper outside of the domain or the building or wherever they were, the Pentagon, and then posted those things on the internet, starting on the dark web, and probably were selling it for some good prices. So it's kind of a poor man's Snowden attack that happened in this last, but we're going to learn more about it as time goes on. The problem is we learned plenty about it much after the fact. So we need to provide protection of data, privacy, of course. Everybody knows that their information is all over the place. How do we contain that in a way so that there's only a way for people to monitor how they use that data? The data is in many cases already exploited. What can we do to make that data benign without you actually doing something? I recommend something cryptographic that allows that data to be used, right? Whether it's banking, whether it's buying something, et cetera. We want to enhance existing capabilities by providing timely, relevant information sharing. It's all about maturity, and you guys know a lot about that. I know you guys have been on ships. I know you've done piping runs. I know you've done electrical runs. You've paid attention to everything's going on the engineering side. On the deck side, the same with cargo ops and stuff like that, knowing where things are, what needs to come first, what needs to come second. Cyber's no different. I attribute a lot of my skill set in the cyber world to what I learned at the academy and what I learned at sea. Because in my mind, and maybe because my mind's a little screwy, but in my mind, a system's a system. And whether it's oil, water, steam, or ones and zeros floating through a pipeline, and whether that pipeline is actually a hard pipeline or a virtual pipeline, really doesn't matter as long as you could get that thinking involved. So, and some of the problems we got to look at is, and this is what you'll be dealing with as you grow up and make more advances in the industry. GDPR, General Data Protection Requirement out of the EU. 4% of your annual global turnover could be your fine. And that's a huge amount of money for a company like Maersk or somebody like that. And like I said earlier, we still have a common problem. This black and white part of this picture is, I think, from, let's see, 93, really about when I got my start in the business. I added the Chinese flag in TikTok. But the bottom line is, what he says is absolutely true. On the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. Most part, you don't know who you're dealing with on the internet, especially in today's environment, because there's just no good authentication and identification capability. We have it, we built it. I built a lot of it for the federal government. We haven't used it very well. What does that lead to? Social engineering, phishing, all kinds of things. And we hear a lot about things like ransomware, other similar attacks that can be mitigated with strong and simple identification validation mechanisms. But we don't remember and we don't pay attention to the fact that ransomware only starts after the phishing, after the social engineering, after somebody has a way to onboard those computers, onboard to servers, and then put in this malicious code. And then don't forget the sneaker net, right? Whether it's a USB device you're plugging into a ship system, or you're plugging it into an upgrade for an engine or an upgrade for a navigation system, or you're upgrading with a USB token. If you don't know where this stuff is coming from, there's no way of knowing whether it has malicious code on it. A big hack, simple hack, not very elegant from a technology point of view. I'm at a trade show this week. People are putting these USB tokens out on trade show floor, hoping people will pick them up. They stick them in their computer. Voila, you got some malware. So little has changed over 20, 25 years. Still a consensus, again, end users and endpoints are the largest vulnerabilities. I do a lot of assessments and audits. Everybody I know agrees that the insider, the mistakes people make, and remember, most of the insider mistakes are not malicious, but they cause a lot of problems. But every time I assess somebody, every time I do an assessment or an audit, oh, my people are great, my people are fine, my people I can trust. Yeah, you can trust them. That's not the point. The point is put something in their hands that can help them avoid these problems. And right now, and we're in a very funny place in our history, we are acceptant of lower assurance standards in order to get immediate satisfaction. Now, my children, my youngest is 31, and he's kind of on the cusp of that. I have a couple of nephews and nieces who are just out of college. I just had one over a couple of weeks at my home, and the reaction was, well, I don't have any secrets. It's only my data, and you know, why do I have to worry? Well, because in aggregate, that information is very important. You know, mom and dad may be using your birthday or some part of your information as a password or something like that. Now, if we got rid of passwords, that'd be great. But the point is, all of this information in aggregate may be used to exploit something. Maybe not today, maybe 5, 7 years from now, when you're looking at a loan or a mortgage or something, it's going to come back to bite you. So cybersecurity has become an exercise in managing risk. What can I get away with? Almost to the point of abandoning mitigating vulnerabilities. And I think our mindset, I know a lot of what we learned in the academy wasn't, you know, what can I get away with? Is what can I do in order to mitigate any problems? And we were always taught to be forward thinking in that way. Unfortunately, IT community, and this is not an IT program problem. I'll point that out very importantly. This is a cultural problem in industry and in the military. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. But we have to do some meaningful change. A lot of the programs that have been built, it started with the Computer Security Act of 1983, if you believe that. I was in programs in 1993 through the 90s, protecting what the government was calling sensitive but unclassified information. And that was passed over as, oh, it's too hard, it's not worth it. And now we're in our hair is on fire. The DoD just put out this new program, CMMC, Cybersecurity Maturity Model, asking everybody in the DoD supply chain and hopefully enforcing that they become compliant with certain requirements set forth by NIST, the National Institute of Science and Technology. Will we get there? We've been getting there for, like I said, since the mid-90s. Some of the things that, if you might hear some buzzwords now, like zero trust and things like that, what the government's been really good at doing is changing the names of things, right? I lived through information security, then it was information assurance, then it was information superiority. Now we got cybersecurity, and I promised my wife I'm going to retire in earnest when they make the next name change. But it is, I mean, I joke about it, but it is ridiculous. Some of the things we're talking about, many of the things we're talking about, and things like zero trust, the NIST requirements, they've been around for 20 years plus. We call them different things, but at the end of the day, there are about 110 to 200 things that you need to do that have been around and common for many, many years. And cyber hygiene has been a primary emphasis, and that's nice. But, I grew up with security clearances. We get our first security clearance at the academy. I don't know if they still do that. I ended up getting a top secret SCI clearance when I owned my business. The difference is with classified and the way we handle classified information, that was somewhat contained. Even if there was a breach, the breach was contained, and it would take time for that to promulgate. And you might have heard of things like the Hansen problem right here, right in my backyard in Northern Virginia. We had some guy, I forget, FBI or CIA, and passing information to the Russians and stuff like that. It was very clandestine and very hard to do. They finally caught the guy. But in the cyber world, a single malicious or non-malicious activity can cause huge consequences across the entire ecosystem. Worse, against every trading partner you have, against every customer you have. I think back, many of you are probably even too young to remember things like the Target attack, the Heartbleed, and some of the other things that happened in the early days of the internet. And this has been going on for far too long, and our economy is paying for it. So is our national security. So result is that we can continue to conduct business online without confidence that these credentials and these identities are true and accurate, or we can try to change our paradigm. Cyber awareness and training is effective to some extent, but a lot of this is human frailty, right? Everybody wants immediate satisfaction. I want my Starbucks now. I'm not worried about the fact that, I'm now on a network that is unprotected and whatever it is. And this is causing a lot of problems. And it floats through our personal life, through our supply chain, all the way up to the federal government and our national economy. So safety of life at sea, safety at sea overall, is heavily dependent on very vulnerable systems. We have not, I get back involved with the MARAD folks and the transportation folks and the Homeland Security folks, Coast Guard, just after 9/11. And that's when we started talking about TWIC and stuff like that. And, unfortunately, they never really used it very well. The seagoing community probably would have been better if they stayed unconnected, but they're not unconnected. We went and got connected. I mean, we got people that have access to engine systems, to control systems, all over the place, from all over the world. And we know those things are vulnerable. We know those things have been hacked. We have evidence that some of the things that have happened, some of the things I showed you earlier, may have been trial balloons by some of our adversaries. Because remember, what you guys are going to do at sea is probably one of the most important things anybody less than the military itself does to protect our nation's security. I've met with a couple of the persons in the DoD that are directly related to our supply chain, our maritime supply chain for our forces. We are very close, if not already there, of not being able to protect and not being able to supply two theaters. And we're very close to being in two theaters of war. So again, a lot of this is information technology, but it isn't an information technology problem. And I say that I'm not a coder, I'm not an IT guy, if you will. I'm kind of a systems engineering guy, a big picture. Where do all of these things go? The problem with IT, and I know this firsthand because when I had started my first company in the late 90s, I was fighting with the early days of AOL.com, the Facebook people, all of these, they were going to the local colleges. They were putting pizza boxes in front of students in the IT labs, and they were hiring, right out of their first or second year. Why? Because they can code, right? The problem is coding without good reason, just like you've heard a lot of times with computers, garbage in is garbage out. And what are we faced with now? Now we're faced with artificial intelligence. And I don't want to even start with what that brings to bear, because artificial intelligence and machine learning, what are they learning off of? They're learning off of what's available on public networks, on private networks. They're learning the same things that people, the same garbage that some of our IT people are using to create IT solutions. IT has been a hobby shop for more than 30 years. We need good systems engineers with context of what they're doing. And then there's also the operational technology you want to pay attention to. Again, these are the control systems, the stuff that aren't intended to be on the internet, but we're moving them all in there. One of the biggest problems I've seen in some of the ports, maybe earlier on, a few years ago, maybe that's been a little bit mitigated now, but when they started coming off of closed circuit TV and putting their cameras on Wi-Fi or internet, all hell broke loose. And that was one of the major places of infiltration into shipyards, ports, even in the Navy. So go through this real quickly. There's a lot of network-enabled device, multiple threats and vulnerabilities. You can read these. I talked about them earlier. Enforcement with any strong security solution must be anchored in some kind of point of trust. The problem is, how do you advance a point of trust in an environment where everybody pushes back? The banks want to own your information, right? The big tech wants to own your information. They want to own your account rather than you have some kind of federated environment based on strong cryptography that you can share with them and keep yourself protected. Common mistakes, even at sea: poorly implemented technology. We see this all the time. We've seen it with all of our systems out there at sea. Unexercised processes and controls and technology, not only technology, but simple controls. I mean, we went out and did a survey. on a number of ships, and their networks were the name of the ship was the username and password was the password, or maybe it was the captain's. It was just strange. Nothing was followed. Desperate systems. I mean, government is the worst there. They make silos like there is no tomorrow. And that's been a big problem in the government. And you can look even at the DOD. Some of you are going to go into the DOD. Even that's like a government, because the Army, Navy, they don't do what each other do. They all have their silos and build their own. So the siloed ecosystem is a big problem. And again, but it's not an IT issue. Leadership strategies is what we need. And I think that's what King's Pointers are uniquely able to provide. So we're addressing the threats. I don't want to go to this in too much detail, but there's what you're exposed, what the threats are, what the vulnerabilities are, and we're going to look at risk analysis, real high level. And then how can we manage that? What are the countermeasures, right? Before you go off and you say, okay, well, I'm just going to underwrite this. Well, that's a big problem right now. Underwriters don't want to underwrite cyber because, one, these calculations can't easily be done, and they don't know what their exposure is. So, you can get $5 million or $10 million underwriting, but it's going to cost you $5 to $10 million per year to do that. And then the important thing, where you guys really come in as well, is organizational context. We need people that are coming out of the roll up your sleeves and do the job work, writing the flow charts and the why we're doing this, so the IT folks can code what we need coded, not what they think we need coded. Quickly on risk. Risk is the probability of a bad thing happening times the impact of that. We talked about that already. Reducing the probability of a bad thing happening with controls, protection, and prevention. That's a good thing. And reducing them with redundancy, detection. But this takes a lot of work, right? People, oh, well, it's too much. I'll take the risk. Now, that risk is becoming far too important and far too big. So how can we be certain that any data is authoritative? And I've seen some very scary spoofs of GPS and other navigation tools and spoofing of information that's being downloaded into control systems. And even people coming on board at ports and shipyards to do maintenance on laptops and plugging them either into your network or directly into your equipment. Unless it's authoritative, you have no idea. And the only way to make that happen is with some kind of elaborate and strong cryptographic processing. I'm not going to go into the details, but I just wanted to bring that up. And then there's this risk matrix. A lot of people use this. You try to prevent these high serious and very probable events, and you transfer it. Transferring is buying insurance. You accept the risk in these low areas. You control and contain here. And then there's this gray area. And this gray area keeps to get bigger every year, right? Because nobody wants to be in this spot because it costs money. And they don't like being here and there either because it costs money. But I'm telling you right now, an ounce of prevention, grandma used to say, is worth a pound of certainty. So it's just something you got to think about. We're back here. What is the goal? I want you to look at these slides later on. They're going to be provided to you, but we got to provide confidentiality, right? You need to avoid that nothing is disclosed that shouldn't be disclosed. Whether you are on ships, whether you're on the business end of shipping, and if you're a public company, especially, this whole thing about being confidential with your finances, with your numbers, with your PII, your personal identification information of everybody on your staff, all your trading partners, except it, very important. You want to make sure that the data has high integrity. You don't want it to be changed in between, the land-based and where it's going and sending it to the ship and vice versa. All of that information needs to maintain. And then the availability, well, that's not a security piece. Availability is important because if that information, if your navigation information isn't ready and good to go when you need it, it's not going to help you. You need it ready on the spot. And what do we want to achieve? We want to achieve non-repudiation. In other words, what I sign, it's like an ink signature. I can't say I didn't sign it. You want authenticity. This is absolutely what I signed. And you want to make sure you get some privilege and authorization out of that. And you can look up some of this a little bit. I don't want to go too deep because I know we have only a short period of time. And then you need to think about this in each state of information. Everybody knows about protecting data at storage, but you gotta protect it during communications. We talked about that in the last slide. Between A and B is where a lot of the infiltration or the information stealing happens, and even in processing, because now everybody's in the cloud. Processing is not in your data center. You got locked up in the next room over. You're counting on somebody else to protect those processes and that data, even at storage. So you got to take full responsibility for that because it's your data or your company's data, your stakeholders' data, and especially, again, if you're a public company, your shareholders' data. Remember, IT is a big piece, but it's people, devices, server, objects, Internet of Things, industrial Internet of Things, everything you can think of. And we want to make sure all parts of the life cycle are covered. You know, we see some pieces here at the endpoint. We got to protect the endpoints. We got to protect how the endpoints move data across to other points, lock them up when they're in other points. So we need it locked at every point. If you look this up, Sweet B is one of the newer algorithms used by NSA and NIST to protect data. There's different ways of implementing it. Again, I don't expect anybody to be, have ambitions to be a cryptographer or an IT specialist or even a coder, although those are options. But I want you to know the basics so you can lead through this. So when the next time somebody comes on your ship or in your home and sticks a USB token in something you don't want it stuck into, you know why. And again, at the boardroom, we're starting to get some access into boardrooms from pay attention to us. This cartoon was a little tongue in cheek. You know, we're the big kids table now with the cybersecurity. Not really, because a lot of companies run by financial people, and the board of directors are all about next quarter. You know, we're not Japan, we're not China, where we're looking 10 years in the future. We got to start thinking about that, and we need good people in the business of shipping, in the business of our supply chain, to pay attention, because there is a lot of loss of advantage and opportunity. You know, maybe this board director is gone by the time that happens, but we want to see longevity, lost in value and brand, loss of life. I mean, this could cause loss of life if somebody's messing with cargo operations. And I saw when I was in Egypt, I saw an Egyptian almost kill one of my. I was a cadet, one of the third mates, playing around with a container and a boom. And somebody messing around with a control system on a container hauler machine could do the same. And remember, cost does not always equal value. And I think the value system we get and the understanding of value at the Academy is very important. I won't belabor this except for the $60 billion loss. Again, lots of you are going to go into the military. Some of you are going to be providing support to the military, either MSC or some other shipping activities. And some of you may go into the civilian area and do some work there. $600 billion a year. That's a lot of kimchi, buddies. That's a lot of money. And it all comes out of your pocket, by the way, because you're going to be paying for my Social Security real soon. And the IP is a whole nother problem. It's something we have to take care of, and we need the new people coming out of school and having an understanding of what's going on. So the notion that there's no immediate preventive strategy that can curtail future cyber attacks, in my opinion, is fundamentally flawed. We got smart ships coming out, we got port cities, we got enterprises, and we're all doing this at the speed of light. AI is coming, there's no stopping it, there's no halting it, there's no, we're going to take a timeout, because China and Russia aren't taking a timeout. We got to figure out how to do it well. Focus needs to be on interoperability, trustworthiness, and privacy and critical infrastructure protection. There's too much exploitation of cyber fear. It's not the end of the world. And we do a lot of that in the United States. Our hair's on fire, the world is ending, and it's manageable. Roll up your sleeves, get ready. If you have to come down into the DC area, you can put on a tie. I know that's, I only have 2 ties left. I got a wedding tie and a funeral tie. I don't wear ties anymore. But, if you want, even in the political side, there's a lot we can do to get this fixed, because this is probably the most biggest threats to your generation coming up. Power of simple. I came up with that a few years ago. Just enforce the right things, do the right things, and try to get around all of these naysayers, because there's a lot of pushback. We can avoid the cyber zombie apocalypse. That comes out of the PhD program I was working in. For some reason, we did the zombie apocalypse training thing for a Homeland Security event, and it played well in my mind for cybersecurity. So cybersecurity will be a key driver in your career. There's no doubt about it. It's going. You guys are all graduating at a time where this is going to be a permanent fixture in your life. Regulatory and at-sea assured requirements are coming out today. Coast Guard just put out this MCAAG Cybersecurity Assessment and Annex Guide. Today it's voluntary, but the Federal CIO Council and the CISO committee under that council is putting together a FAR requirement. So that is going to require, like the DoD, assessments and compliance with all of these requirements for cybersecurity. So if you're working on a contract or on a ship that's under contract with the federal government, or moving in ports or anywhere else that is contracting with the federal government, or an engineering firm, you are going to be under these requirements. And even if you go into the marine underwriting field, there's going to be a lot of things to look at on whether even there's a possibility of really underwriting some of this stuff. The list continues to grow. Within the industry and beyond, right? We got cybersecurity law and policy. I got a lot of contemporaries that are working on that right now. A former Coast Guard JAG I've been working with is working on cybersecurity law and policy requirements. Cybersecurity and insurance, we talked about. Corporate risk management and continuity of operations. This is a big thing. SEC is coming out with a lot of requirements for public companies to follow with compliance requirements. Assessment and audit requirements are all over the place. If you end up going to DoD, chances are you're probably going to get out of the department at some point and go work for somebody in the defense industrial base. They're all going to be compliant, and within a couple of years now, you're not going to be able to get a DoD contract if you're not compliant with their, and assessed to be compliant with their requirements. And again, your strong awareness of the threat and opportunities to mitigate bridge, cargo, engineering, or boardroom incidents will be invaluable. It is a connected world. You can't get away from that. My coding experience was limited to BASIC and Fortran. And I don't even know if we had computers at the academy when I was there, but it was not easy to get into. I think we had an online agreement with Columbia University or something. Now a computer is in your hand, right? You got more computing power in that smartphone than some of the rockets that went into the moon. So what do you offer as a Kings Point graduate, right? And you're all going to graduate, right? I don't know, you must be near or past licensing. That was fun. So leadership abilities. I think that's probably the number one most important thing, maybe in every industry, but it is lacking in the cybersecurity industry. Self-discipline. Again, to be able to say, okay, I don't understand this completely. It's a big change to my way of life, or it's a big change to the way I do business, but I know it's important, not only for national security, not only for the national economy, but the citizenry of the United States. Practical experience, right? I can't tell you how many people in the IT community just have no idea what happens on the other end of what they've coded. They just don't get that feedback, and they don't want it. They want to be in their little cubbyhole, and they want to do their stuff. I had a bunch of programmers I worked with when I had my company. We used to sit in the conference room. I used to whiteboard and flowchart, and they'd be on the keyboard, and I'd say, shut the computer. I'd have to pull the plug on the network sometimes because they wanted to code before they even know what they were coding. Problem-solving skills. This is a problem, and you guys are all well-equipped with problem-solving skills and professional expertise. And I don't think any other academy offers the options at Kings Point. However, those of you that are going active duty in one of the forces, you're going to be behind this power curve because the other academies have a very strong cybersecurity program. As a ship's officer at sea, ashore, or in the maritime intermodal transportation field, you'll be faced with leadership roles that will require a disciplined approach to cybersecurity. Senior management, the poor guys, I know some of my classmates are still at Crowley and some of the other shipping areas, and they see these things happening. These are fire drills they're putting out all the time. And they're not getting a lot of help from our federal government. The need is growing faster than any other. You are uniquely positioned to preserve our nation's supply chain. And that is a big thing. We talked about some of the threats, some of the, parking a ship somewhere where it shouldn't belong. These folks I talked about that own the supply chain for our DoD theaters of war, between the fact that we only have 80-something ships, and the fact that the Chinese either run most or influence most of the seagoing ships in the world, and the fact that they don't like us that much, they could actually, with a cyber threat and not showing up, blockade the United States. Think about that a little bit. So we got to get that a little bit back on track. I'm still knocking on doors of congressmen and senators, but they don't understand the problem. It's got a long education to come, and hopefully those new generation of people like you coming up will help make that happen. So that's my presentation. I don't know if you have any questions, but I'm happy to answer them.
So anybody has any questions, please type them in the chat. I'll read those at Dan, but just to get started, Dan, you're talking about, we've got a lot of insider issues, most of it non-malicious. Talk about the traditional type of security training is not so effective when it comes to cybersecurity. And then the idea about the new systems-based defensive approach to eliminate this human weakness. So from a practical perspective, and I know you have a lot of involvement in training at MITAGs, what kind of advice can you give us to kind of improve the quality and effectiveness of the training that are provided to Kings Pointers here while they're at the academy, but also on board ship?
Well, I can't really speak to the academy because I've spoken to Rear Admiral Ballard. I've spoken to who was the dean who went up to Marriott? Sasha?
Sashi, yeah.
Sashi, and I've talked to some other folks at Marriott. Hey, listen, there's no doubt that the curriculum at Kings Point is just chock-a-block. I know that, and I don't know whether there's a way to do that at the academy. Things like this are fantastic. Cybersecurity TV, we do a lot of things that we can pipe into and we do pipe into the academy. Tell you how I got started is I just started, and this would be postgraduate. I started with correspondence courses on the Internet Engineering Task Force. Now, this was in the early 90s, just after Al Gore invented the internet, and it was really early on. I just got interested in it, and that goes back to my being a dually, right? I'm always interested in new things. I'm always interested in learning things. My tags, I'm working with my tags right now on a number of postgraduate education programs for the maritime industry, which once they graduate and are at sea, what the not the drawback, but the long pole in the tent is getting the unions to pay for this. As you know, Tim, when you went to sea and when you graduated, we had a lot more ships. We had a lot more people paying dues into the unions. We had a lot more flexibility with how we could spend that money. And we did it. I think they did a great job. I graduated at a weird time. I graduated in 81. So when I graduated, it was just after Jimmy Carter killed most of the subsidies for U.S. shipping. We went from, I think in 77, when I marched onto Barney Square, I think we had 1,500 plus or minus American flag seagoing ships. We graduated, there were about 500. So getting a union ticket in 81 was, if you didn't know somebody or you didn't know somebody died and you could pick up their, I mean, there was no way. I ended up sailing tugboats, which is nothing like sailing ocean going. They were ocean going tugs, but it was not the best experience. And then I came and the way I got involved, I came to DC. I took a job with a marine engineer, naval architect firm. They're still around. I think they just got procured, Gibbs and Cox, and got involved with the Navy Systems Commands, and in those commands they had information security officers, and I just got interested. I bought myself an IBM clone and started playing and having some interesting. And then at these classes, I met some interesting people. I met the two companies that came together that formed Netscape, and actually they were pushing out this Netscape Certificate Manager 1.0 that became the root of what the DoD public key infrastructure became, which I was actually, my company and my team was the systems engineering team for that. But I got to tell you, the more and more I look back on what I did and how we, again, it's just another system. People look at cyber and people look at the internet like it's something out of George Orwell or some science fiction. It's just the next evolution in a systems environment, and I think the drawback is we don't have enough system-oriented engineers and architects working in that community, and we're paying for that.
Okay, let's see. So do you have any practical advice for shipboard personnel on how they can assist the ship to reduce its risk through reducing the vulnerabilities?
Yeah, so whether you're a decky or an engineer, just pay attention to your systems. You've already done this, right? You probably have already mapped out the systems on your ships. Due to your SEER requirements, probably most of that was focused on the mechanical systems, the electrical systems, etc. Go ahead and do the same thing on with your internet systems. Try to trace even through Wi-Fi. Wi-Fi is a soft version of a wired connection, but trace those systems, look at what they touch. What is your engine control system connected to, and is everything all on one network? Is there a way for somebody to maybe be on the bridge or be near the anchor winch or wherever they are, or maybe you have surveillance cameras, right, that are hooked up to the internet, and kind of map them out, kind of look at, are they all connected? Is there a way, could somebody pull the Ethernet cable or hijack the Wi-Fi on the video camera and get to those engine control systems, get to the control systems and the navigation aid requirements up in the bridge? Just treat it like another system, because that's what you've learned to do. And you're going to have some, believe me, when you're sailing, you're going to have some time on those ships to do some of that, and understand that some of the older folks, the guys from my generation are not going to understand this. They're not going to, they're probably not going to listen to you. They want to hear sea stories. They want to hear your analysis. But all these companies now, they have beneficial what do you call them? Suggestions. I'm sure it's all online now, but give them some suggestions. What you think you should do? How you can. One of the biggest things in protection of services in any network or any enterprise is separation and segregation, right? So if you can map where things are and are not separated and segregated, a big one is the computer that, or the computers or the network that everybody uses to phone home and maybe play computer games and what else they do, because the computer games are one of the big places people like to hide malicious code. Are they, do they have access, or are they on the same network as some of your critical systems on board ship? And maybe there's nothing you're going to be able to do on that ship at that time, but this is going to be a journey. This is going to be something you're going to be living with for some time now. And then eventually you're all going to get leadership positions. It's very rare that you're not. You're all going to be sitting somewhere where you can be asking the youth out at sea and the youth in your offices to look at things a different way. So try to understand that mindset. Understand that how to look at things a different way, and use that to change the culture overall.
Okay, just one. We're hitting up against the clock. But I have one quick question. You talk about the new systems-based defensive approach. How does a company start with that, and what role do you see the ship playing in developing that?
Well, I think it builds on what I was just saying, right? If you are, so a lot of the folks that are in the corporate office now probably haven't sailed for a few years, right? And so they don't know exactly what's on a ship. They don't know exactly how things are connected. And if it was anything like it was when I was on ships, there's certainly, most of the services are not as built, right? There's the engineers, fix things, bypass things, they upgrade things. There's a lot of things that are going on. So what you need to do is collect that information. If you're doing it on board, bring it up to the corporate office, but more importantly, look it up online. You know, there's a lot of information right now on all of these systems and how they could be vulnerable and stuff like that. And, you know, just tell, you know, hey, by the way, did you know that this system that is critical to this is also connected to this system that is very vulnerable? And the defensive approach is do something about it before something happens. And I can't emphasize that more. Right now, we're in almost, I would say, 99.9% reactive mode when it comes to cybersecurity. Defensive means, you know, I'm fixing something, I'm fixing a potential vulnerability before that vulnerability is exposed. That's kind of the answer for that.
Well, thank you very much, Dan. It's been a very informative presentation. We really appreciate it. And it is an extremely important subject, as you well know. And so Bill is going to present you with a certificate. So Bill.
Thank you, Bill.
There you go.
Well, I really appreciate this. You know, I joked earlier about the happiest place in the world, and you'll learn that it is after you pass those gates for the last time. And, you know, from my perspective, everything I've done, everything I've achieved is because of the Academy. I was a rotten little Italian boy from Long Island, and it straightened me out a lot. So I really appreciate you guys doing this for the midshipmen. And anybody that has any questions, Tim has my email address. I'm happy to talk to anybody. I am semi-retired, so I have some time. And if I'm on the golf course, I'll call you right back.
Dan, thank you very much. Really appreciate it. And I look forward to passing your presentation around.
All right. Thank you very much.